Well, after the first two games of the regular season, the St. Louis Blues are 1-0. They got shut out at home by Minnesota, and then, of course, fought their way to a win in Calgary against the Flames. There have been some early struggles that have some Blues fans concerned. So, should we really be worried about the Blues, or is it too early to tell? Which players have had notably good or bad performances so far? What do we need to see from the Blues moving forward? How good can this team be in 2025, 26? So we're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. It's John and Alec with you as always. If you are new to Note News or haven't done so already, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe or follow wherever you're watching or listening. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And you can follow us on socials as well, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Those always go a long way. Alec, we have regular season hockey, my man. This is our
We're
first.
back.
This is our first episode with regular season hockey games being played or have been played and are being played now. So we made it. We're here.
We're back.
So you went to the home opener, right? Against Minnesota. How was that? I know the game itself was pretty disappointing, but how was it to be back in Enterprise Center again?
Yeah. To get the negative out of the way, the game absolutely sucked, but the everything else about it was super exciting. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. Blues fans showed out. They filled the stadium. They were cheering loud the whole time. There one section in particular that was starting chants the whole time and like had the energy going, got me going. It was so much fun to be back, and yeah, I'm super excited for Blues fans this season, but the game was not so fun. Not, I mean, they played decently well, which we'll talk about here in a second, but just yeah, super disappointing. But ready to get into it, and we're so back. Regular season hockey is here. Let's go.
It is here. We made it. We made it through the long and arduous off season. Um, yeah, finally here. So now we got some games to react to. Obviously, as I said at the top, the Blues lost the first one, but they fought their way to a win in Calgary yesterday. It wasn't pretty, but they got the 2 points out of it. They won 4-2 after getting shut out at home 5-0. So they're sitting at 1-1-0. Why don't we just go game by game here and react to a little bit of what we've seen so far from the Blues? So starting, with game number one, of course, at home against Minnesota, 5-0 Wild is how that one goes. The Blues don't get on the score sheet at all, but the Wild sort of have their way with the Blues, it felt like. And I think the big story of this one, other than just getting shut out at home to open the season, which, to be fair, happened all over the league. It wasn't just the Blues. I'm not saying that's like a league trend or anything. I'm just saying they weren't the only ones that disappointed in their home opener um, in the league this past week or so. But still, not fun. I think one of the big stories here was just Philip Gustafson had a great game and really shut the Blues
Yeah.
down. So, what did you see? Just big picture out of this game. We can start big picture, like whichever way you want it: offense, defense, special teams. What were you seeing out of the Blues in this first one? What was sort of the story of the game for the Blues on that front?
Yeah, so the big picture from the Wild and the Blues game is that they actually played pretty well, all things considered. I know the score didn't go their way and didn't get the results they wanted, but if you look at the expected goals metrics, the Blues actually led and had like 3 point something expected goals versus the Wild had like 2.16, I believe. Um, so they were doing everything right. They just Gustafson kind of stole the game, and it was a heroic effort that you wouldn't expect in the first game of the season. And then yeah, the I hate to be kind of, I don't know what the word is, but looking for excuses for a loss, but I do agree with Rob in the chat. Like, the puck luck was just absolutely atrocious for the Blues. It was every single bounce that the Wild would get, they'd have a man open in front of the net, and every single bounce that the Blues would get, Gustafson just swallowed it up. And you can credit a lot of that to goaltending, I think. So you'd expect or want Binder to have a better game than giving up 5 goals in the first game of the season. I think that's what you could say there. But like even then, I don't blame Binder for most of those goals that were scored. It just seemed like the Blues weren't ready to start the season, really. And I think that's a conversation we can have getting into the preseason preparations. Um, but yeah, the Wild absolutely played well. Have to credit them. Like it wasn't just a game that the team had nothing to do. They did play well. Um, and I think the Blues, as we saw in game two, still couldn't get the bounces until the second period, but have been doing everything right and have been looking decent in their looks and in their offensive chances, and it finally broke through like 4 periods in, which kinda hurts given how the rest of the season has gone for some other teams, but yeah, I liked what I saw, in a loss. It's just it was a loss, so you hate to see that, especially against the Wild. And a bigger conversation I'd like to have later in the episode is that I think these games are so important against specifically against Calgary and against Minnesota. That could be really crucial for playoff matchups.
Sure.
So it kind of stings more the losses that we did have. But yeah, I liked what I saw in the loss. And I want to see more consistency out of the Blues. I want to see them finishing more chances because the finishing was there, but Gustafson just really stole the game. So it it was a frustrating game to watch.
Yeah, I think frustrating is the best way to describe that one. It's kind of what happens. Sort of the best way to describe when you get goalied, I guess. But I think I think there are some positives to be taken away. Like I think to the Blues' credit, they through three periods, in terms of like generating chances, I think hung with the Wild pretty well. Granted, they didn't have a great first period. I think they got off to a pretty poor start. Maybe it's a chemistry thing, maybe it's a nerves thing, but yeah, maybe it's as was it Matt in the chat that said, yeah, didn't really get any practice as a full NHL squad before the season started. So maybe it's a combination of all those things. So they got off to a pretty poor start, allowed two in the first period, and I think the momentum was just kind of went the Wild's way from then on out. But to their credit, I think they sort of came out strong in the second, and from there on out played a pretty competitive game. One thing that I saw, I think it was Montgomery that pointed it out, and I think this pretty much fits with what we saw from the Blues. They just put it, you know, they put it their shots on Gustafson's logo like way too many times, right in the middle of his chest. They
Yeah.
weren't really trying to get it by him. They weren't really trying to find a specific slot to go into. Right, it was just kind of shoot it at him, shoot it at the middle. And so the quality of the shots themselves, in terms of where they were on net, I think should have been a lot better. But where the quality of the shots that were taken, right, like location wise and that kind of thing, I think looked pretty decent, right? The way they got set up and took shots was fine. It was just where those shots specifically were placed on net that were I think a big issue for the Blues. So that's a big one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the way that they went about attacking Gustafson is they didn't really have a lot of they didn't their net front presence wasn't quite as strong as you'd have
Yeah,
hoped
yeah.
from the a Blues team that kind of showed that that was their MO for a while. Um, and so I think that they could have done a better job with screens and such. And just being a more physical team up front. I think they did a nice job on the back end there on defense, but I think offensively they were a pretty predictable team, and that allowed the Wild to kind of have their way with them. So I think that
Yeah,
quality of shots is a big thing in this game, like you said, and that was part of it.
yeah, for sure. I'm trying to find some more of. I liked some of the quotes that Monty had, but yeah, another one that you just pointed out was not enough net front presence, and I think that was a strength for the Blues at a lot of points last season, and so that's something that you'd want them to get back to. And for what it's worth, I think that issue um, was was made decently better in the second game. I think they had a much better presence in the front of the net in game two. We can get to that in a little bit. So I think that is a point that may have been sort of hammered into them after game one was um, got to be better in front of the net. Got to be threatening up close much more than they were doing. So um, I think that's a big one as well. Any other big picture takeaways from game one before we maybe move on to some individual like player performances?
Yeah, I do. I think that there was a lot of questionable defense,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Let's talk about
I
that.
think I think that could be potentially a weakness for this team that going into. So I don't mean to be too negative on the episode, but I do have a lot of negative things to say about what I've seen so far. And I think a big one looking forward is defense, and just the way that they have not really played very actively in the defensive zone. They're really passive, and they're letting a lot of pucks bounce around and get fired towards the net, and that's how you let chances go in. So I have not really. Um, I've not really liked what I've seen from the defense so far, to be honest. I think Parayko's played phenomenally. I think he's played really, really well. I think Cam Fowler's played great. I think Broberg has played well too. But I think Falk, Mayu, and Tucker have all kind of taken their lumps. And I think the forwards playing defense too, outside of probably Holloway and maybe Kairu, have left a lot. Like I think Thomas is a guy who's left a lot out there and has really disappointed in his defensive looks so far too. So I'm looking for more effort on the defense in blocking shots, and I think they did that in game two, which we'll get to. I think they put more effort into blocking shots, but I think in terms of disrupting passing lanes and in terms of breaking up the opposing team's system, I think there's a long way to go. And yeah, I want to see more.
Yeah, defense is another great one. Just wanted to point out like four of the five goals for Minnesota in game one came right in front of the net, came in
Right?
some high
Yeah,
danger areas.
exactly.
There was one from the faceoff dot, I think on the left side. The other four were right there in front of Binner, and so like you said, they did get some puck luck. There were a lot of deflections and sort of lucky bounces that went Minnesota's way. But the Blues need to have defensively a better net front presence. On that on that end of the ice as well to try and take away the opportunity to get some of those lucky bounces. We just saw way too much of that in game one. So I think that's another thing to keep an eye on is defensively net front um, how they adjust, how they defend, defend their guy because yes, it was 5 goals allowed. I don't know that you can argue Benner was really to blame for all of them. I think maybe one or two were definitely some shots he should have blocked, but for the most part, I think he did a solid job. Um, so yeah, any thoughts on? We can sort of shift to you've sort of done it already. Shift to some individual player performances. You mentioned Pareko you liked, Robert Thomas maybe you didn't like so much. I think Philip Broberg did pretty solidly defensively. I'll just go ahead and give him his flowers. At least in game one, I think did a solid job on the defensive side of the puck. But yeah, what were you seeing individually? Because I think there are some. Or would you rather talk game two and then move on to some like player trends? What do you want to do here?
Um, I think we can just stick it with game one.
Sure. Yeah. So what were you seeing on an individual basis from game one? You mentioned a couple already, but any others?
Yeah, I thought Cam Fowler played really, really well. I thought Cam Fowler kind of stood out as one of the standout players for the Blues, as um, just one of the best players on the ice,
Hmm.
and I thought he really looked good and looked competent or confident in his chances, and I really liked his passing ability, what he showed off over the past couple games. Um, yeah, I think Cam Fowler played excellently and proved that contract was earned above everything else. And I think otherwise, I believe I really liked what I saw from Jordan Kyrou and Dylan Holloway. I thought Dylan Holloway had a great game. I thought the second line was the best line on the ice of any team, of either team, I should say.
Hmm.
Um, and I really enjoyed what I saw from that line, like just playing confident and playing loose. It seemed like they had the script down for what they needed to do and how they needed to win. Um, I really enjoyed what I saw from the second line. And then, like I said, Colton Parayko just was standout defensively. He looks so rejuvenated and young, and he looks so confident. I think Colton Parayko's in line for a huge year because he looks so good coming out of the gate. And if he can start out hot, how far can he take that momentum? A guy like Colton Parayko, you'd trust to take it pretty far. So I thought there were individual pockets of success that looked really, really good, but I thought the bottom six did not play so great. I thought Robert Thomas in the first game looked really poor, and so but definitely Cam Fowler was the standout for me, as well as seeing a guy like Colton Parayko, and then the second line looks all the way back to what they were doing last season. Which, if that's the case, that's a very, very exciting outcome.
Yeah, sure. Just to highlight a couple other good performances, I think, and Colin pointed it out in the chat. Kyrou, I think Kyrou had a pretty solid game one. Looked pretty good all around. And then, I mean, as you said, that whole second line was pretty good. Holloway was pretty effective as well. Um, why don't we talk about some more concerning player performances as well? Because I think there were a couple. I mean, Robert Thomas was one, but there's another one that I think we should get to, and this trend has sort of continued through the first two games. Logan Mayu is someone that's received a lot of criticism from Blues fans already after two games, and I think the criticism itself is warranted, right? I think he has looked pretty shaky so far. With someone like Robert Thomas, he's got the reputation, he's got the track record. He may be to some extent just shaking off the rust and getting back into it. He just scored a goal. I think assisted another as well yesterday. So maybe he'll be just fine. But Logan Mayu is still finding his way a little bit in the NHL, and I think, in my opinion, was understandably a little bit shaky so far. I think the criticism itself is warranted because he hasn't looked good, like I said. But what I have seen is some Blues fans just sort of ready to give up on him already, and I think it's made more difficult by the fact that Zach Bolduc is apparently the greatest goal scorer in the league now. Um, that doesn't help the situation for sure. But what are your thoughts on Logan Mayu? What did you see from him in game one? And we can take both games as a whole sample size if you'd like. But what is your lean on Logan Mayu? Are you worried about this guy? Do you think it's fair to be worried about him already? What are your thoughts?
No, I'm not worried at all, and I think it's not. I think it's crazy to be worried at this point. This was always a long-term trade. This was always going to take a while to see the benefits of, or the yeah, the benefits or the results of the trade. It was always going to take a while to set in. And I think with Mayu, he's going to take his lumps. In that first game, I got to say he looked really bad defensively, but he's still adjusting to the league. I mean, he's barely played in the NHL at all, only played 7 games, so there's going to be a an adjustment period, and it does sting more that Bolduc looks great. But the thing with Bolduc is that his progression is already pretty much done. Like, he's become the player that he's going to score between 20 and 30 goals, probably net you 50 to 60 points. Logan Mayu can be similar in production levels as a defenseman. It's just going to take time to get there. It's just going to take a while before he's able to achieve those heights, because he's just not at the same level uh, as Zach Bolduc, who had a year to adjust and then had a full year in the NHL to get there. So Logan Mayu is farther back in his development cycle, but it was always a long term play. I'm not worried at all about Mayu. I just think it's going to take time. He's really going to be a second half player, if anything. And I think we need to exercise a little bit of patience, because there's gonna be some lumps taken, especially defensively, that he's gonna have to learn from. But they're giving him the runway to learn, and that's a really, really good thing for a young player. There's a really great way they're going about his development. It's just, yeah, it's just gonna take time.
Yeah, for sure. I agree there. And I think he has become a little bit of a victim of his own preseason success. I think we really liked what we saw out of him in the preseason on both sides of the puck, to be honest. So to see him go from having a great preseason, looking really solid, looking maybe better than some fans expected, to looking like maybe you know one of the more underperforming players out there on the ice in these 2 games. It's a little bit tough, but let's be real here. He wasn't playing against full NHL regular season level competition in the preseason, so any production in the preseason needs to be taken with a grain of salt. We can draw conclusions and extrapolate some information from preseason performances, but really until the puck drops in the regular season, it's um, you know the hockey they play in the preseason isn't really. It needs to be taken lightly. It needs to be taken with a grain of salt. So I think that has sort of raised expectations for him, and pretty quickly. But I'm with you. I think this was always supposed to be a long term outlook, a long term timeline for Mayu. Um, and defensemen, I think, tend to take a little bit more time to. I mean, especially for a guy like Mayu, who we're expecting to be more of an offensive guy. It might take time for him to sort of adjust to the NHL level of play. As a defenseman, he's going to have to, play on both sides better than he ever has, and that stuff takes time. So there's still a lot of development in there for him. We're 2 games in, and they were the like eighth and ninth games of his NHL career. So let's slow down. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. He's probably going to be fine. And needs to just be given the time and the runway to get comfortable and really get into his groove and perform the way that he has at every level so far. So as Matt in the chat pointed out, he's got a great ceiling. As we have discussed throughout the summer, there's a lot of it. There's a lot to be excited about in a guy like Mayu, and so I think, like you said, let's just exercise a little bit of patience with him, because I think it just takes time. Um, And then, yeah, I'm not ready to say that the trade was a mistake for those same reasons. I mean, Bolduc may have 3 goals already through what, like 3 games, I believe. Which happy for him. Like that's great. We all we all knew that he was on the verge of a solid season, on the verge of some kind of breakout campaign pretty soon. So I'm not surprised that it's happening. Maybe a little bit surprised that it's happening already. But we don't even know if it's happening because yes, the sample size again is really small with Bolduc. We're 3 games in. I'm not saying I hope that he falls off or regresses because I like Bolduc a lot, and I wish the best for him, of course. But we don't really know what the season holds for him. We're 3 games in, so on both sides, I think it's going to take a much larger sample size to really draw any meaningful conclusions about this trade. So I don't think we can do it yet. Um, any other players that you were maybe a little bit? I mean, we've talked about guys that we liked. Any other players that you were maybe a little bit more concerned about or disappointed with their performance in game one?
I thought this isn't necessarily individual players, but I thought the whole bottom six kind of got exploited and didn't really play to their potential. Um, like Bukestad, for example, I think kind of had a rough game in game one. Torpchenko, Walker didn't play great. Matthew Joseph had a really kind of stinker of a game one. Uh, and yeah, I thought that largely the bottom six as a whole was a big point of weakness on the team and definitely has me worried for what the bottom six could be, because how this team is supposed to win and how this team is supposed to have a good season is by them being a successful depth team and by having good
Mhm.
players up and down the lineup, to where they can just not lose, uh, consistently when their depth players are in. But definitely in that game one, their depth players were losing. So I am worried about the depth of this team and if they can. And I think in game two, my fears weren't exactly alleviated either. It was better, but I think that's the spot on this team where I'm most worried.
Yeah, and I think there are games where your depth can look shaky, but your sort of team leaders can make up for that, right? Can cover for those guys. But like we saw in game one, the main guys like Robert Thomas, uh, and some of the other guys, like they didn't exactly cover up for those depth pieces when they were looking shaky too. So yes, the depth can be and should be a strength for this team, and I think I also expected it to be a little better out of the gate, but it doesn't help when your main guys and your quote unquote star players aren't really performing uh, along with them. So that was definitely tough to see for sure. Why don't we move on to some positives here? Because game two, through the first period looked a little rough again, but then after that, I think the Blues looked much better. They sort of got some of the luck to go their way and ended up winning that one 4-2 in Calgary. So let's pivot to talk about this one. um, and just to sort of summarize some of the scoring, because the Blues actually got on the stat sheet this time. Jake Neighbors obviously had a 2-goal performance, so the hometown kid comes through. Really exciting to see that. Robert Thomas got a power play goal and tacked on another assist on the first Jake Neighbors goal. What else? Pius Suter scored his first goal as a Blue, so excited to see that. Um, Jake Neighbors, it was his first goal that was kind of off the rush, right? Or was that his second one?
His first goal came from a feed from Thomas.
Yes. Yeah, and just like went 5 hole on Dustin Wolf. That was really cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Just a,
Yes.
a really good skilled goal, and Jake Neighbors is the kind of guy that we want scoring in the net front. So um, it is maybe a little bit unexpected that to get on their horse, one of the young guys like Jake Neighbors had to get him started, but at some point you just got to get going. And so the fact that Jake Neighbors as the hometown kid could go in and score a real skilled goal like that, and great feeds by Buchnevich and Thomas as well to set that up. I think that really got the Blues going. Robert Thomas with the power play goal. That was just a goal scorer's goal right there. That was he went far
It was
side.
so nice.
He went far side over Dustin Wolf's shoulder. That was really cool to see. And then Jake Neighbors and Pius Suter got like really similar tip ins from really similar spots. So they got that net front presence that was sort of lacking in game one. Um, Fun fact: my dad was actually at that game. One of like maybe 6 Blues fans in Calgary at that game. So um, that was a fun win, a fun first win for the Blues there. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we can sort of move it in the same structure as we did for game one. Generally speaking, looking at big picture things like offense, defense, special teams, what did you see out of the Blues? I mean, obviously it was a better performance than game one because they came away with the 2 points, but what looked good, what looked bad, starting with the big picture here in game two?
I thought that the offense played pretty honestly, I thought that they played pretty similarly to how they played in game 1. And that was the issue and some of the randomness of hockey is that it can be a cruel sport sometimes. Um, so I thought that they played well. I thought that, yeah, like you said, the net front presence with Jake Neighbors, especially taking over that role, was great. I it was apologies. Rob in the chat said that Neighbors should be top line. I don't know if he needs to be like top line playing with Thomas, but I think playing with a guy like it's tough, but whenever they want to switch out Braden Shen for Pius Suter on that second line, because it really feels like the wingers are doing a lot of the work in terms of carrying the momentum of that line. So maybe I am starting to come around on the Pius Suter for second line train and switch out Neighbors to play with Braden Shen because I think that those two could really benefit from each other. But either way, I've really liked what I've seen from Jake Neighbors so far. He had a great game in that second game against Calgary and really showed out against a tough competition for sure. Um, and yeah, I would say I liked Cam Fowler and Colton Parayko still looked like an excellent top line duo. Definitely showed out and definitely had a phenomenal outing in Calgary. And then Robert Thomas has kind of a comeback game of like, I'm still here. I'm still that guy. Don't worry about me because I'm still going to be your number one scorer. Um, really announced himself as back to all the way back to the previous levels we had seen with Thomas. And yeah, I'm liking what I've seen so far from the top six as a whole. I think that they've all shown out. I think Buchnevich with a nice little assist had a nice game. And I'm really enjoying. Yeah, I'm repeating myself here, but I'm really enjoying the top six play so far. I think there are top six that can absolutely compete and play at a very high level. It's just the depth of the team has me a little bit worried with their play so far.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just, I mean, why don't we go back to Jake Neighbors here because the way we saw him deployed, he got most of his ice time alongside Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas. He played 6 minutes with Robert Thomas and about 5 minutes with Buch. We really didn't see him deployed on that third line. He played like 3.5 minutes alongside Pius Suter. So he really was deployed like a first liner in this game, and I think it paid off. So um, I don't. I'm sort of with you. I don't know that I would move him up to the third line, um, or up to the first line. Excuse me. Just sort of like nominally. Maybe you can deploy him in those spots and in alongside those players in certain situations. Like if you really need to get your net front guy set up with some quality chances, maybe you just run him out there with Robert Thomas for a few minutes. And I think that's what we saw here. I don't know that it needs to be, Jake Neighbors is a first line guy now. I think that comes with some expectations, and not that he isn't capable of living up to them, but I think he is more solidly in my mind a third liner. Um, and I mean, it's sort of a drum I've been beating all year. The third line needs to be able to score too. So if Jake Neighbors can provide that goal scoring from the third line, um, then I think that's a winning recipe. It's just you need your top line to produce. You need your best players to produce. So um, I would really like for Jimmy Snuggerud to maybe um, I don't know get back to that readiness that we saw him come into the league with at the end of last season. I feel like to some extent we haven't seen that as much from him early on here, and so I think that's a big reason why they made the switch as well, throughout the game, just sort of swapping him and Jake Neighbors, at least in terms of how they were deployed. I mean, Snug also saw most of his ice time alongside Thomas and Buchnevich. It was just kind of he and Neighbors were the rotating wingers on that top line. So I think for this team to be as successful as we have hoped they can be and projected them to be a lot preseason, we're going to need Jimmy Snuggerud to have a solid season and really establish himself on that first line. So it's still early, as you know, that's what we've been saying all episode. But that's sort of one thing that I want to see from him moving forward is taking advantage of that opportunity a little bit better. But another thing that I just want to point out, sticking big picture here, I guess returning to big picture here, that net front presence was a lot better in game two, and we saw that on both sides of the puck. Right, 3 of their 4 goals were scored up close, 2 deflections right in front of Dustin Wolf, 1 from Neighbors, 1 from Suter, and then Jake Neighbors obviously sort of bullied his way into a 5-hole goal there to get the scoring started. We saw Robert Thomas take that power play goal from the face-off circle. But yeah, three of their 4 goals were right there, right in front of Dustin Wolf. And then on the other side, they did give up one sort of close to Joel Hofer, but the other goal they gave up was from the face-off circle. And I guess I'll backpedal on this a little bit. While they didn't give up a lot of high danger goals, I wouldn't say that was actually because of the defense, because I just remembered what a fantastic game that Joel Hofer had, and I think he was sort of the saving grace for the Blues here, kept them in it long enough for them to get the offense going. But at least on the offensive side of the puck, we saw them have a much better net front presence and really getting into those up close and personal scoring opportunities. So really happy to see that out of them in game 2. But yeah, any other large big picture offensive or defensive takeaways for you?
I actually do think Snuggerud has been playing decently well. I think it hasn't come for him yet, but I think he's been really creative and shifty in his looks, and I think he's been putting pucks to the net the right way. I think with for Snuggerud, it's coming. It's just not there yet. Um,
Yeah, and I,
and
I should say real quick, I don't think he's been bad. I just don't think he's really been like standout. But yeah, go
yeah,
on.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Um, and I think that other big picture takeaways, I think the goaltending has been pretty decent. It's tough because that the Binner in first game did allow, 5 goals. That's not ideal. That's not what you want. Um, but I still think the goaltending has been pretty decent overall. Uh, and I like their ability to play fast in the offensive zone. It seems like they can set up decently well, but it's just their finishing has been really off and have missed the mark on some passes and whatnot. So yeah, looking for a little bit more in terms of the precision of this offense, but this was never going to be a precision offense. So I think their weaknesses are just kind of feeling worse than they really are. Um, in that they're not this kind of Vegas Golden Knights, Florida Panthers team to where every pass is just this beautiful, perfect dish from player to player to player. It takes a little bit more for them to get there. Um, so I I think that I've liked what I've seen so far tentatively, but I think there's a lot to clean up, and I think Montgomery has some work to do. Being 1-1 with the way that they're playing is kind of a I don't know. A blessing feels a little bit rude, but it feels like it's impressive the way that they've been playing to be 1-1. So I am happy about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think as as poor of puck luck as they got in game one. They sort of got they got good puck luck sort of on the other side in game two. So definitely good to see. One other thing I want to say, like big picture, the Blues have got to do a better job of staying out of the penalty box. The penalty kill was working pretty well, but like I think let me count it up here: 7 penalties from the Blues. One of which was Tyler Tucker fighting, but other than that, it was I mean, it was holding, tripping, slashing. So I think they just got to clean it up a little bit better. Got to look a little bit better out there because the PK was a big weakness for the Blues last year, and glad that it's been decently effective so far this year, but don't want to overwork that PK unit. So that's got to be something that they clean up moving forward. Um, why don't we move on to some like individual player performances here in game two, and we can sort of start to sum the two games up all together. But I think standouts to me are obvious: Jake Neighbors and Joel Hofer. They were the Blues players that earned stars of the game. Um, Great game from Jake Neighbors, and great game for Neighbors believers everywhere. Got 2 goals. And then how about Joel Hofer, right? I mean, he let me just read out his stat sheet. 27 saves, 27 saves on 29 shots against. So that's a 931 save percentage. Um, got the W. I mean, just a standout performance from Joel Hofer. Kind of stood on his head here, and really, like I said, kept the Blues in it, and really allowed them to, get back in, get competitive in that game. So really liked what we saw from Joel Hofer in this one. And through one game is ninth in the league for goals saved above expected. Um, he's got 2 goals saved above expected. So it's early. It's a cumulative stat, so that should go up throughout the year, or I guess it can go down too. But yeah, great performance. Great performance from him. So that means that there's um, around 4 expected goals against, and he really kept the Blues in that game. So shout out to Joel Hofer. Any other players you want to highlight that you think stood out in this one? Maybe redeemed themselves. I think Robert Thomas has a case, but yeah, who did you like in game two?
Definitely Hofer. I think Cam Fowler and Colton Pareko as a pair have been working together really, really nicely. Um, Jake Neighbors obviously has been playing terrific. And I'd have to say I think watching the team gel together, it's going to take time. But I think that there's a really great upside here with this Blues team to become something even more special than they already are. Just given how the passing has been so poor so far. That's the only way to put it, is like playing through the neutral zone, playing in transition, which was such a strength for the Blues previously, has been really, really subpar. And so if that can turn around, if that can become once again a strength, which we've seen it with largely the same core become a strength before, um, then you're starting to talk about a Blues team with some real playoff upside and some real positive, regression to the mean coming. I think it's coming for the Blues. I think it's just not quite there yet, given how the passing through the neutral zone has been really, really rough, and the play in transition has been really, really poor. So I'm looking forward to when they can get that on track, and once we get guys like that going, then you start to see names like Pia Suter, like maybe Logan Mayu, like Nick Bukestad, like Toropchenko, who we got a question in the chat about that I do want to address. Um, Starting to really become factors in the playing field.
Yeah, for sure. I do think Robert Thomas looked a lot better in game two. I think he was one of the best players out on the ice.
Yeah.
Obviously scored a goal and then set up Neighbors for the his first goal as well. So, um, 2 points through 2 games. Can't ask for much better. He's on his point per game pace. And he'll need to pick it up to get that MVP consideration that we've been hoping he can get. But yeah, let's talk Torpchenko. Let's talk Torpo. So Rob in the chat asked, he is predicting that Torpo gets traded at the deadline, obviously a pending UFA, and did not play this second game against Calgary. Was he missed in your eyes, Alec? Was it noticeable that he was absent from the lineup here in game two?
I think kind of not. I think that kind of I don't know. With Toropchenko, excuse me. I think that he just plays a very simple style of hockey, a very easy to read style of hockey that allows other teams to sort of take advantage of when he's on the ice because you know exactly what's coming and you know how to counter it. And so I think that they're they took advantage of it, and I think that they could probably continue to take advantage of it, just given how he's played so far. So yeah, I think kind of he was not missed.
I think that's fair. I mean, that fourth line this game, we kind of saw Matthew Joseph take Torpo's spot on the fourth line, and I mean, as is anything that we have really discussed today, it needs to be taken with a grain of salt because we're 2 games in. Um, but yeah, I mean, I personally think the expectation was set pretty high by that fourth line last year, that WTF line being the identity line. Well, I mean, a really key piece of that line is gone, right? Radek Fax is back in Dallas. Um, and so I think it's going to take time for like that fourth line, if they want it to continue to be an identity line for the Blues. It's going to take time for them to rediscover that chemistry, develop new chemistry, whether it's with Nick Bukestad or Oscar Sundquist once he gets healthy. That type of identity might take time to develop. I think that's fair to expect. So, you know, Torpchenko being you know being gone from the lineup and um, us not really noticing what he does bring when he is in the lineup, not really noticing that be absent. I think that is definitely understandable, and I think I'm in the same boat with you in that I didn't really didn't really miss him necessarily in game two, but I think part of that is just Matthew Joseph is a little bit more of a noticeable guy than Torpo can be. At least more
Yeah.
consistently noticeable than Torpo, who can just turn on the jets sometimes, but he's not always that fast offensive force.
Yeah, and what Monty talks about is that Toropchenko is one of those guys like a Dylan Holloway to where he can just turn it on and electrify the line that he's with. And I just don't see that from Toropchenko, and more so, I don't see that electrifying ability to really be one of the best players on the ice when he's there. That elevates the teammates that he's with. I honestly see that more from a guy like Matthew Joseph, like you mentioned. That I think Matthew Joseph, with his speed and with his defense, is just as important in electrifying the team that he's playing against. And I really think that I just don't see it as much with Toropchenko. He's a player I've been critical of in the past, and I think will continue to be critical of just given how he plays. That I think that there's a baseline that can be filled by other, sort of quote unquote replacement level players that some other players might not be able to hit at the same level.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I'm really going to need him to return to the lineup and start producing if I want my bold prediction on Torpo to come true. I think I predicted him for like 30 points, 35 or something like that. Go check out our bold predictions episode if you want to hear our hot takes for the upcoming season. But or I guess now it's just the season because we're here. Um, but yeah, I think that's a great point on Torpo. Um, any other like individual player performances, good or bad, that you want to highlight from game two? Because I think we should sort of move on here to close out the episode with some big picture season talk.
No, I don't think so.
Cool. So as you have mentioned a few times, you're maybe feeling a little bit pessimistic about the Blues after two games. I think you're not the only Blues fan for sure. There are some others out there who are a little bit concerned by the struggles that we've seen from them early on. They got the win in Calgary, obviously, but it wasn't exactly pretty. I wouldn't say they really dominated that game, at least not the whole game. Maybe at points, or maybe they dominated specific periods, but it wasn't really like a solid effort from start to finish. So, um, are you worried? Are you worried about the Blues at this point?
No, I'm not super worried. I do think I'm tempering my expectations a little bit, but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm worried about the team at all.
Okay.
Um, just given how few games they've played and how little we've seen so far, I don't think I'm worried about the team. I am tempering my expectations though, so I guess you could take that how you will. Like I don't know what buzzword we want to use to call that, but um, yeah, I am. I guess maybe that's a little worry. I don't know. I
Yeah, I mean, you were pretty gung ho on the Blues to start the season. I think you had them nabbing that second divisional spot by the season's end, and I mean, like you said, it is way too early to really be fully in or fully out on this team. They're 1-1-0. You know, it could go either way as we stand here today. Um, I think, given how like I said, how gung ho you were on this team at the start of the season, maybe there are some concerns creeping in.
Yeah, there are some concerns creeping in, but I'm not like full blown panic on this team, not by a
Sure.
long shot.
But what if I told you that the money puck odds wheel have them back under 50%? They're coming in at 49 now to make the playoffs. Are you worried now?
The wheel will do what the wheel will do. The
The
wheel
wheel and its
taketh and the
infinite
wheel
wisdom.
taketh away.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about this team. I mean, I think being 1-0 after two, I think that's fine. They do need to, if they want to have that regular season success that they have sort of been been preaching over the summer, right? Get to 100 points, improve by 5%, see if they can not just be a wild card team. I think if they want to do that, they're really going to need to pick it up here. And so this week, I'm looking for them to really show out with some better performances, so show some better team play as a whole up and down the lineup. But I'm not. Look, it's two games in, and like I said, we can't draw any meaningful conclusions about this team after two games. Um, but looking forward, I mean, we do have some things that we want them to improve on or continue doing. So I think those are some conclusions we can draw. So looking forward as we look to the week ahead and the rest of October, what do you want to see out of this team? What do you want to see them continue to do that they've done well, and what do you want to see them improve upon and really make adjustments here?
I really want to see them get back to, well, okay, the biggest thing is the passing and transition game through the neutral zone has to get back to where it was because what they've shown so far has not been good enough. And so they've got to get back to where they were coming into last season. Uh, and I think that's really what I'm watching for is seeing that continuation of terrific play through the neutral zone. Um, and then I'm also looking for a more connected and more uh, directed approach in the offensive zone. It feels like they've just been sort of passing it around loosely and offhandedly. And I'm looking for more of a continuous attack and attempt to attack. to create sustained pressure in the offensive zone that they've been kind of flailing around at so far. So I'm really looking for a better week of hockey. I think that they've showed enough to not be worried, but I'm still watching for a much improved showing of what they can be, because I think the first 2 weeks were not good enough, straight up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's well put. Um, I want to see some better chemistry, whether it's whether it's
Right.
between offense and defense or whether it's along a specific line or a specific pair. That's what I really want to see. We've seen some of that from that second line, like you said, that Holloway, Shin, Kyrou line has been decently solid. But I mean, if I gave you like one characteristic of how that line generates offense, what would you say it is? Because I know what I would say, but what would you say? This is how that second line generates offense.
Intensity.
Intensity, that's a great one. I would say off the rush. I think that's like a big part of how they score. Through 2 games, they don't have any rush attempts. That line or any Blues players don't have they have 0 rush attempts so far. So I want to see some of that identity that each line has coming back. Right, if it's that top line, it's well made plays from Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich to set up whoever that other winger is, whether it's Jimmy Snuggerud or Jake Neighbors, as well as each other. Right, I think that top line has the opportunity to be really skilled and a great playmaking line. That second line, I want it to be intensity, and then again, like on both sides of the puck, like the offense and the defense needs to improve as well from these top 2 lines especially. So I want to see some more rush scoring. I want to see some skill from those wingers on the second line, and then down the lineup, I think we really need those bottom 6 players to establish more of an identity of their line. And I think this might be a process that takes more than just the upcoming week to sort of figure out. But a big part of the Blues season last year was vibes, just the vibes of the team as a whole, the vibes of each individual line. And so I want to see that start to get fleshed out here. I want to see some signs of that chemistry really coming through. Um, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Hmm.
I mean, I will say the Blues have not allowed a 6-on-5 goal yet. So
I gotta say, when Calgary pulled their goalie in
were you nervous?
at the I my heart was in my stomach, man.
Yeah. Hey, they pulled through. They pulled through. So for the upcoming week, they've got an away game tomorrow night in Vancouver, followed by a home game against Chicago on Wednesday the 15th, and then another home game this weekend against the Dallas Stars. What I think 2-1-0 is or 2-1. Uh, I want to see them come away this week with 2 wins. If they can get 3, fantastic. But I think they at least have to be able to beat Vancouver and Chicago, obviously, and then just put up a solid performance. Even if they lose against Dallas, this is one of the best teams in the league, so it's not shameful to lose to them in the same way that it is to maybe the Blackhawks. Um, but I think I want to see them come away from this week with at least a couple of wins. What are your thoughts on the week ahead?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think 2-1-0 is pretty fair. I'd like to see them go 3-0, but
Yeah,
I think if we're being realistic, Vancouver is a decent team. Dallas is a really good team, currently leading the Central. Um, that's going to be a tough draw. I think in the month of what are we in October? In the month of
hmm
October, though, I'd like to see them have a winning record, and that's so like if they go 1-2-0, I'm not going to be pressing the panic button yet. As long as they go 2-1-0 in the next week, and then 2-1-0 in the week that follows. So you know,
yeah, and I think the schedule for the remainder of the month that's totally doable. There's some good opponents mixed in, but like for the most part, this is a schedule that they can come away with a winning record from. So after Dallas, they've got Kings, Mammoth, Red Wings, Penguins, Red Wings again, and the Canucks again. So that to me is 3 weeks of feasible, winning record weeks. So yeah, I think coming away with a winning record that's going to be big, and I think is a fair enough expectation for this team, but one that they you know it's kind of like with an 82 game season, every win counts, and so I think it's time to get off to a good start here. But yeah, just for the week ahead, like I said, away game in Vancouver and then 2 home games to finish out the week. So we'll be back here. Anything else that you want to touch on before we get out of here?
Excited hockey's back.
It's
Let's go
back.
Blues.
It's back. Go catch a game if you can. They're going to be playing 6 more home games this month. So go support the Blues. Pack
I will
Enterprise
be
Center
at a
and
lot of them, so DM us if you want to come find me.
yeah, go meet Alec. Go meet Alec. And then I just want to say before we close out, we've got our fantasy hockey season starting tomorrow. Did our draft a little bit late, so we missed out on the first few games of action. But in one of them, Alec and I are week one opponents. So this time next week, going to be a lot of trash talk going one way. Me too, Alec, I should say. All right, well, we're gonna be back here later this week to react to the growing sample size of games. We're gonna react to the next few games that the Blues play. So if you want to join us, join the conversation and give us your thoughts on how the Blues are performing, ask questions in the chat, then we'd love to have you. So yeah, definitely tune back in on our next episodes. But thanks for joining this time. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think we're in like the 530s now and moving up. So help us get to 550. Let's set that as our next milestone here. Help us break that. So hit that button if you haven't. Like this video, follow, rate, and review on audio. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Those ratings and reviews go a long way. And then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. As the season ramps up, we're hoping to be posting some more content, some more graphics. We've got new graphics for the new season, so go check those out. And like I said, thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.